Should you be using bridging finance to finance your property acquisitions? And also, what is bridging finance and how does it work? And how can you use it correctly and avoid the common mistakes that many people make when using bridging finance? So my name is Simon Zutshi. I'm the founder of the Property Investors Network, which is the largest network in the UK for property investors, founded back in 2003. For the last 2 decades, I've been teaching people like you how to become successful investors. And I've got thousands of people we've helped replace their income. And I'm also the author of Property Magic, which is the Amazon #1 property bestseller with over 100,000 copies in circulation in the UK. It's probably the best read property book in the UK. So this particular video, I want to talk all about bridging finance. Now, this is slightly different to the normal finance you'd use for property investing, but this can be a very powerful tool you can use to grow your property portfolio when used correctly. Now, the whole point about bridging finance is to get you from one place where you want to buy a property to the place where you can actually finance it normally. So it's a bridge to get you from one place to another. It's a type of finance which can be used very, very quickly. So if you're going to auctions and buying property, or if you're working with a motivated seller who needs speed and you want to do a very quick transaction, bridging finance might be the way to fund that particular property deal. However, because it's meant to be short-term finance, the rate you're going to pay on a monthly basis is going to be much more than a standard mortgage. So what you tend to do is use bridging finance to acquire a property in the first place, and then as soon as you can, refinance to a normal mortgage. Now, most mortgage companies want you to hold the property for at least 6 months before you refinance, so you need to factor that into your equation. Now, the amount you might pay from bridging varies dramatically depending what's happening in the market, but it might be as low as 8% per annum, 10%, typically 12%, or maybe even more than that. 15, even 18% I've heard for very short-term borrowing. So let me explain a little bit about it. So let's say you find a really good property deal and you're buying it below market value. Let's say the property is worth £200,000 and you're buying at a 25% discount at £150,000. Now, one of the amazing features of bridging finance is that the bridging company, they understand property. They're not like normal mortgage companies who don't really get property. They understand the value of the property. And if you're buying at 150 and it's worth 200, they will actually lend to you based on the value. Now, they obviously want you to have some skin in the game. They're probably not going to give you all of the money because they want to make sure if anything goes wrong, you've got some commitment to make sure the money gets back to them. But the bigger the discount, the deeper the discount you get, generally the more they will lend. And if you're buying at enough of a discount, some bridging companies might lend at the moment up to about 90% of the purchase price. So let's say you're buying a property for 150,000 and it's worth 200,000. Well, 90% of the purchase price would be 135,000. So they might lend you 135k and you need to put in just 10%. However, and this is a mistake people often make, you sometimes need to pay some extra money up front because many bridging companies will say, we'll lend you a gross figure of 135,000. However, we want to take out our interest. So let's say you're paying 1% a month. You'd be paying £1,350 per month based on a £135,000 mortgage. And they might say, we want to take 6 months of payments up front. So although they're going to lend you 135 and that's what you're paying interest on, they'll take off maybe the first 6 months of interest. So in fact, they give you maybe more like 125. So there's extra money for you to find up front. So be aware of that. First mistake that many people make. They think they can get all the money that the bridging company is offering. Now, sometimes with bridging companies, you can pay as you go. So as long as you can afford it and you can demonstrate you can afford the monthly payment, they might lend you the full 135 and then you just pay them the interest on a monthly basis. Now, to arrange bridging, the bridging company will want to make sure they understand the value of the property and they want to make sure there's some good equity there. So they're going to want to do a valuation. Many of them will do what's called a desktop valuation. So they'll work out literally on a computer using like comparisons how much they think the property's worth. Sometimes they'll want to send an actual surveyor or maybe one of their own specialized employees out to go and assess the property and make a decision on it. But normally they'll want to make sure there's some good equity there. They want to make sure, again, if they have to take the property back, they'll be able to sell it quickly at a discount to get all of their money back and all of their fees. So there's a valuation that might take a little bit of time, and sometimes there might be a charge for that. The other thing is you need to use specialist solicitors who can act very quickly. A normal property conveyancing solicitor is probably not going to be able to do a transaction in 4 weeks. They just take longer than that. Crazy as that might sound, but it's true. So the lender will have their own mortgage company, and very often you as the borrower have to pay for the legal fees of that particular lender. And they're not cheap. It might be several £1,000s that you also need to pay. So it's very important when you get an offer from a bridging company, you look at all the terms and conditions, you understand what all the expenses are that you need to incur when you're taking on that bridging finance. They'll also normally charge you an arrangement fee, maybe 1 or maybe 2% of the loan. And some bridges will also charge you an exit fee. So when you pay it back, they'll also charge you an extra maybe 1%. Now, some don't charge you that, but some will. And again, a lot of people make the mistake by looking at the headline rate they're going to charge you. What do they charge me each month? And they just do their decision based on that, but they don't look at all the extra costs that you have to pay. So it's really important to put together a little spreadsheet and assess the costs to make sure you're getting the most appropriate bridging finance for you. And it's not always the one that's charging the lowest rate. You also want to make sure that if you are using bridging because you need speed, the people you're working with, whether you're direct to the bridging company or maybe you're working through a mortgage broker, make sure they are fully aware of the timescales. Maybe you're getting an amazing price on a property, a big discount because you're doing a very quick deal and there's a date by which that has to be done. Make sure the bridging company are fully aware of that and buy into that date as a date by which they can get the deal done. If the time's too short, they might say, sorry, we can't do it. Or they might say, well, we can do it, but we need to charge you extra because we need to pay our solicitor extra to get the deal done that quickly. So again, just go into this with your eyes wide open. If you're using bridging to do developments, what will happen is you can often buy a piece of land or a building and the bridging company might give you a certain percentage, maybe 70, 75% of the purchase price. And then they will give you the money to do the development. So it's development finance from a bridging company. I was very frustrated with the market. I found a lot of lenders who are financing these kind of development projects really didn't actually understand property. They certainly didn't understand creative strategy like purchase lease options, like freehold to leasehold title splitting. So actually in 2013, I decided to set up my very own bridging development finance company. It's called Crowd Property. I'm gonna put a link in the notes below. And the reason I did that was I was using other people's money to fund my property development. It's something I teach my students, something you should do. At some point, everybody will run out of their own finance. So you should use other people's money. And I was paying people a really good rate on their money, and they got the opportunity to look over my shoulder and learn from the project I was doing. It was a very, very popular service. People were lending me chunks of £50,000 and multiples of that. However, I realised not everyone on my database had £50,000 to work with. And there might be lots of people who had less money, but would love to get a return on their investment much better than they were getting in the bank. But I didn't really want to deal with hundreds of investors on each of my projects. I also realised lots of people do my year-long mastermind program who are finding really good development projects and they'd use their own money at first, then they'd run out of their own cash, and they were struggling to find people to fund their deals. So I thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if I can create a platform that brings together the people with the money, the lenders, and the people who want to do the development, the borrowers, and we marry them together. And we do some due diligence and research to make sure it's a really good deal. And obviously we go out and we offer these properties. Now this has to be a FCA, Financial Conduct Authority regulated business, so the Crown Property is completely regulated, and we've been running pretty well for the last 10 years now, and actually Crown Property has funded development projects up to about £850 million. That's actually close to £350 million of loans, and that's from people who are on the platform, normal people who want to get a better return on their money, people using money in their business, people using money in their pensions, and also some institutions and even the British Business Bank all lend money through Crown Property. So it's a great way for you to find and fund your development opportunities. But remember, it's short-term finance. Typically, the loans are anywhere from 6 to 18 months. Once you've finished a development, you either sell it or you refinance it to pay back the crowd and all of their money. So understanding you don't have to just use your money, you can use bridging to finance your deals. So let me give you a couple of other important tips when using bridging finance. The next one is this. Property often takes longer than you expect to do your deals. A mistake I see people make is they ask for money for 6 months or maybe 12 months. Well, really, you should add on a bit of extra time and ask for money for longer than you need. Now, usually you can pay it back early without having to pay any penalties, and you only pay interest for the time you've actually used the money. But make sure you have it long enough to get the project done, because if you don't pay it back on time, you go into what's called a default period, and the interest rate goes up. There might be extra penalties you pay as well, and it becomes very, very expensive. So please make sure you ask for the money for longer than you need it, and check whichever bridging company you're using, they're okay if you pay it back to them early. So that's one very important point. The other thing is you need to think about your exit strategy. So you're borrowing money at an expensive rate for a short period of time with a view to refinancing that and paying back the loan and getting onto a much lower interest rate for a longer period of time. It takes a long time to arrange refinancing. Most people do not allow enough time. They get to the point, they run out of time when they're bridging, they're getting stressed because refinance is taking longer. So you cannot start the process of refinancing early enough. It's really important to get all your ducks in a row and make sure when you need to get the money back to the bridging company, you get it back to them on time or even earlier than you said you were going to do because you've got your finance lined up. Again, check the small print with the bridging company. Some companies, if you don't pay them back on the exact day you said you're going to pay, you're going to pay penalties even if it's coming back early. So again, it's really important to check the small print, maybe get someone who understands how to use bridging to explain it to you to make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. I'm not trying to scare you off using bridging, I'm just trying to make sure you don't make the expensive mistakes I see many people make because they just don't know what they're doing when they're using bridging finance. I do hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button. It helps the algorithm, it means more people are going to see the video. And make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the bell icon so you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you want to find out about Crown Property, you can click on the link below in the description. In the meantime, I'd encourage you to invest with knowledge, invest with skill. I'll see you in the next video.